support.
The maestro, please!
You waited 2 months for this one, so we're finally back with another episode of Pop Analysis. Today we'll be looking at Blinding Lights by The Weeknd.
The Weeknd.
Been a hot minute since we first talked about The Weeknd, back when we first started doing this, when we were talking about I'm a motherfucking star boy. Since then, he's made a couple of other pop hits, such as So Call Out My Name and You gon' pray for me, take my pain for me, save my soul for me.
Background.
Blinding Lights was originally released last year on November 29th. It charted in the following month at number 11. It hit number 1 this year on April 4th. Despite it being knocked out of being number 1 for only a week, it quickly got back to number 1 and is still number 1 as of the beginning of May. Blinding Lights is off of The Weeknd's newest album, After Hours. After Hours was released on March 20th of this year and came with 2 other singles besides Blinding Lights, which is the second single. The first and third singles in that order would be Cause I'm heartless, and I'm back to my ways cause I'm heartless. All this money and this pain got me and in your eyes I see there's something burning inside. Back to Blinding Lights though, the song has been so successful that it actually has inspired 2 remixes, one done by Chromatics and another one done by Major Lazer. The song has even found its way into other forms of media, being used to promote both Super Bowl 54 and WrestleMania 36. There was a TikTok challenge, and it's even rumored to be in the new video game Cyberpunk 2077. Joining The Weeknd in the creation of this song are Belly, Dahila, Max Martin, and Oscar Holter. Ahmad Balsh, aka Belly, is an artist within his own right, but also has some pop credits as well, some of his higher ones being
6-inch heels, she walked in a club like nobody's been there.
And
It's gonna be one of those nights, one of
Dahila actually comes back as he also worked on Starboy, given since then he's also worked on
a lie, a lie, a lie, a lie, a lie, a lie, a lie,
and
I can't lose you, baby. I can't lose you, baby. I can't lose.
Max Martin, aka Pop Music Incarnate, comes back. We last talked about him when we were doing
'Cause I don't care, as long as you just hold me near. You can take me anywhere.
Since then, he continued to work with Ed Sheeran,
Beautiful people, top designer clothes, front row fashion shows.
and has even done some movie work with some very high-profile singers.
Don't call me angel, you ain't got me right. Don't call.
Lastly, we have Oscar Holter, another musician who comes out of Sweden along with Max Martin. Some of his biggest credits include
I love myself, no I don't need anybody else. Hey, gonna love
as well as
just like fire, burning up the way, rocking like the world up for just one day.
Blinding Lights is released jointly by XO and Republic Records.
Form.
Blinding Lights is a synth pop song, is 3 minutes 22 seconds long, 4/4 time, technically in C minor, though it tonicizes F, which would allude to F Dorian, and is about 170 beats per minute. We obviously start off with the intro, which has 3 different parts to it, the first being just that opening F minor chord. We then get the addition of some drums, before getting the last part of the intro, which gives us our main theme of the song, musically speaking. After that, we get our first verse.
I've been trying to call. I've been on my own for long enough.
Our first pre-chorus,
Since city's cold and empty,
and then our first chorus.
I'm blinded by the lights.
That pattern then repeats with the second verse.
So I hit the road in overdrive, baby.
The second pre-chorus,
I can see clearly when you're gone.
and the second chorus.
Oh, I can sleep till I feel your touch.
We then get a bridge,
I'm just coming back to let you know I can never say it on the phone.
a third and final chorus,
I said, ooh, I'm blinded by the lights. No,
which then takes us to our outro.
I can't sleep till I feel your touch.
Lead synth.
This is our main musical motif that plays throughout the entirety of the song. It focuses mostly around that F, but ranges from a C to a B flat. Oddly enough, all of the notes combined simply make a C minor 7th chord with an added F.
Bass.
A much more funky bass line than we typically see in some of the songs we look at. The basic melodic contour of this bass line goes F, C, E flat, B flat, in the range of being an octave from that B flat, which is really just encompassed at the very end of the bass line.
Backing synth.
The second synth that plays, and much more in the background during the quieter parts of the song, has two distinct parts to it. The first part, when it is much more filtered, simply outlines a C minor triad with an added F, which it arpeggiates. Following that, the synth becomes much more prominent in the orchestration, first going back between A and F and G and F, before switching to G and E flat, F and E flat, before ultimately quickly ending on a D.
Chords.
Finally, we get some explicit harmony, which only plays during the higher profile parts of the song, at least in full. We open with an F minor over A flat chord before going to a C minor over G chord, an E flat major over B flat chord, and finally ending on a root position B flat major chord.
I'm going running.
Verse.
The melodies for the verses are all very similar and basically focus around the idea of a C minor triad ending with an F, which I've mentioned before, so you're noticing a harmonic motif there.
I've been trying to call. I've been on my own for long enough. Maybe you can show me how to love. Maybe.
As you can see in the second half of the first verse, the melody stays pretty standard, just changing some rhythms to account for changed words.
I'm going through a drought. You don't even have to do too much. You can turn me on with just a touch, baby.
Even in the second verse, which is only half as long as the first, it still stays around the same melody, the only large change being that melisma at the very end, which takes us into the second pre-chorus.
I'm running out of time, 'cause I can see the sun light up the sky. So I hit the road in overdrive, baby.
Pre-chorus.
The pre-chorus differs greatly from the verses, besides just the additions of some backup vocals. Notice how he goes much higher in his range, going up to the G above the staff, and the highly syncopated rhythms that he's using.
Since city's cold and empty, no one's around to judge me. I can see clearly when you're gone.
The second pre-chorus is nearly identical, minus the fact that there are some changed words, as well as no backup vocals in the very beginning.
City's cold and empty, no one's around to judge me. I can see clearly when you're gone.
Chorus.
The chorus, appropriately, is where the Weeknd ends up going the highest in his range, hitting that high B flat. In addition, while we've kept the syncopation from the pre-chorus, we also have much longer held notes.
I said, ooh, I'm blinded by the lights. No, I can't sleep until I feel your touch.
The second half of the chorus is very similar to the first half of the chorus, given that we don't have that high B flat at the very beginning of the phrase, and we have some haze thrown at the end, as well as some changed words, obviously.
I said, ooh, I'm drowning in the night. Oh, when I'm like this, you're the one I just,
Bridge.
The bridge is actually where The Weeknd gets the highest in his range, hitting that C above the staff, and pretty much staying in the upper part of his vocal range, only hitting the C on the staff at the end of one melisma. Rhythmically speaking, we have a combination of those eighth notes from the verses, as well as some syncopation that came from the pre-chorus and chorus.
I'm just coming back to let you know I can never say it on the phone. Will never let you go this time. I said,
While this song may seem simplistic, especially when comparing it to some of the rap songs we look at, which have extremely complex rhythms, it's good to remember that this song was designed to be a pop song. Pop songs thrive on simplicity in order to be memorable and catchy. That being said, there is some level of complexity to it, but that complexity is done with a very steady and slight touch. Some of you may have noticed that when we were talking about the backgrounds of the other songwriters and producers, a lot of the songs we mentioned actually had The Weeknd in them, either as a direct collaborator or at least a feature. Just goes to show you that if you make a friend who ends up making it big, might be good to foster that relationship so you can get some other high-profile works out there.